What's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you all have had a great Tuesday. Here to break down some things as far as the tropics and what the weather really looks like getting into the rest of the month, and then taking a peek at July. Not too much into July, but really just talking about the rest of the month, as we have about another week pretty much left in June. So we're going to break everything down. We're going to talk about the tropics, give you an update on what we're seeing, and break everything down. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider subscribing to my channel. Your support is amazing and it's much appreciated. I've picked up about, I don't know, a little over 270 subscribers in the last 2 weeks or so. So thank you all for the incredible support. I'm on a mission to try to hit 10K by the end of the year. So thank y'all. Hit the like button if you like the video. I upload daily, even when the weather's not so active. I definitely keep you guys updated as much as I can. I'm also a storm chaser, so I get out on the field and get my hands dirty and chase the weather. So definitely hit the subscribe button. So let's get going. Let's take a look at the tropical Atlantic. What we have going on out here, not a lot. I mean, there is a lot, but not a lot at the same time, as far as not a lot as anything being super active. There's the rest of what was Tropical Storm Claudette. It's pretty much fizzled out into nothing. You have this area that we'll talk about briefly that has actually, the chances of it developing into anything has dropped. I don't think it was ever going to be a threat anyways. And then you have this pretty intense, vigorous tropical wave moving off the North Africa area, and might get mentioned by the National Hurricane Center within the next few updates or so, but I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty low chance of developing, obviously, like most systems are. But there's a ridge of high pressure out here, and nothing really going on right out in the middle of the North Atlantic. You can tell, look at all the clear skies. You have some convection blow up going on right here, but this is a cold front that's pretty much cleared the area. Some clouds and high humidity rocked pretty much the area of the eastern U.S. It's still pretty humid, but drier areas filtered in, and we're going to have several days in a row of below normal temperatures and lower humidity across the eastern U.S., and we're going to talk about that too. For the short term and what it means for the rest of June. So National Hurricane Center, what do we have here? Well, basically, this is in the next 48 hours has a 20% chance to develop. And then in the 5-day range, it has a 10% chance to develop, so even lower. So this isn't going to survive likely unless it gets some kind of last-second Hail Mary. I have a feeling right out here you're going to get a area hatched in yellow for maybe a 10 to 20% chance to develop. But that's pretty rare, guys. Normally you don't have anything out here this time of the year. But a lot of models, ensembles, actually have it surviving all the way into the Lesser Antilles. So we'll kind of watch that. We'll figure out what's going to go on with that. I still don't, if I had to make a call, I don't think that's going to be anything. But I'm not really talking about the Pacific side, but there is a system right here that really has a chance to maybe go all the way into a hurricane and affect areas of the Pacific side of Mexico. Now, we're going to be talking about this area, like we did with Claudette, and the formation of a tropical system that potentially could develop in the next 10 days or so, maybe less. Might be talking more about it as we get into the tail end of this weekend. So we're going to really talk about that. There's a CAG, which is basically a bunch of convective energy, potential spin-ups, potential low pressures that could really develop over Central America. When they have a chance to get over any body of water, whether it's on the Pacific side or the Atlantic side right in here, they have a chance to develop. So what we got going on here, this is the latest GFS. This is the 18Z. I will mention, a lot of those vigorous, crazy, intense runs that were showing a full-fledged hurricane getting into the Gulf of Mexico around next week has kind of died off. But I will mention that it's starting to show it again in the evening run. So you're not going to get any kind of consistent pattern. What we're kind of looking at is can we get maybe some ensembles, like the GFS ensembles, the European ensembles, to really bite on this some, and they're really not. We're just looking at operational runs, which really aren't a responsible thing to look at, but it's a good thing to look at for long range. Is it sniffing out something? Is it going to translate to ensembles? We're going to try to figure that out. But as we're moving through in time, here's that wave that's really going to watch out. Check out the low pressure that really pops off. This is the low pressure right here. Notice that energy that the National Hurricane Center was showing. Looks like it kind of fizzles out. Watch over here. Watch over here. I know it's a lot to watch, but this is the time frame we're at. We're at Thursday evenings of this week. We're getting into the weekend. Notice this hurricane forming off the coast of Mexico over here. This has a chance to really bring impactful weather. We're not going to talk about that much because I don't talk much on the Pacific. It's a lot to cover if I try to cover the entire northern hemisphere. So here comes our wave getting off the coast of North Africa. It actually tries to survive into the tropical Atlantic. It gets going. Off one run. This is one run. And look how all the green you're starting to see around this time next week, right around here. You got a low pressure popping off here. Then you got an L popping right here. That's a potential spin up over Central America. If that can get over water, that has a chance of developing something. And sure enough, it does. You get some organization of tropical energy that really gets going into the Gulf, and it has it going into about a tropical storm, maybe a low-end hurricane briefly, and then impacting some of the similar areas that Claudette did. It starts to development as early as next Monday or Tuesday. Then it really drifts due to the slow steering currents at bay with rigid high pressure, kind of in the same, a little bit more north, maybe around the same area where it was a couple days ago with steering Claudette. So this is going to try to steer right into the U.S., whatever develops. So I really think potentially that anything that does happen late next week, there is going to probably be a surge of tropical moisture into the Gulf. Is that going to develop into anything? We just don't know yet. Is this little wave that goes across the tropical Atlantic going to develop anything? I would say probably not, but the high pressure might keep it in the southern areas of this section, which the more south it is, the more chances it has developed. Normally when you get any kind of tropical systems way out here, there normally really isn't any rigid high pressure in place, and they get too far north and they kind of dissipate, and normally they don't really survive. But watching this system right here, so definitely something to watch. It's pretty far out, but Claudette was that far out too, and it ended up being something. Well, look at the European. The European hadn't showed anything for the last 2 days, but it does show that wave out here. It picks up on it very well. It barely kind of survives, and then it looks like it kind of fizzles out. But notice right here, watch the energy right here, right over Central America. It actually pops something off right into here. I know they don't look like much, but you see the area in darker green kind of starts to develop some kind of tropical energy and forces it into Texas as early as maybe next Friday. One run. That would looks like a tropical depression or storm. Not much to it. The Canadian really don't show much of anything. We look at the wave down there. The tropical Atlantic actually has two waves fighting for each other. They don't really get into anything. Then you look at areas of the western, I can't think right now, the Western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and notice nothing really gets going. Now, it does pick up on some kind of energy right here in the Western Gulf of Mexico, kind of like the European does, but then again, not much of anything. You look at the SpaghettiOs for the good old EPS ensembles, there really isn't a lot of anything. Yeah, it picks up on a couple circles out here that are potential low pressures, but you don't see anything widespread at all. It shows one little lone hurricane really hitting into the same area Laura did with Louisiana, but really there's just not a lot. There's not a lot of support from the ensemble still. So that's pretty much it with the tropical update. I don't really want to hit the nail into the wood all day on this one. There really isn't a lot to get detailed with because there really isn't. So let's briefly talk about this in the short term for the rest of June. What do we have here? Well, I'll tell you, it really looks like the rest of the week is potentially going to be cooler than average. As well, it's okay. Yeah, we're in the past right now. So here we go. Getting into tomorrow, all the blues are obviously the cooler than average anomaly. So it's cooler than the average temperature at this time of the year. So check it out. You got the blues and the dark blues and the pinks. That's cooler than average temperatures for this time of the year. When we're getting into late June, we're almost getting into July, and there's no, on the eastern U.S., there's no real intense heat in sight. There really isn't. We're getting into the weekend. It's still cooler than average. Now, these aren't super cooler than average temperatures. These are maybe a couple degrees. And so a couple degrees cooler than average is still in the 80s. It's still warm, and it's probably still humid. The humidity begins to build back in too. So I think the big reason why you're not, and it looks pretty warm in the Northeast compared to average, but I think the bigger reason why you're seeing these cooler than average anomalies is because I think you have more of a wet pattern in place. Normally on the days when you have a high chance of rain, you normally have more cloud cover, and normally your actual air temperature doesn't get as high as normal. The humidity is very high, but the actual air temperature isn't. We don't really look at the humidity. So the next 6 to 10 days, that carries us from June 28th to July 2nd. 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Center National Weather Service. Big area, big high chance of below normal out here in Texas and Oklahoma, but even here in the Southeast, big chance of below normal temperatures. Now, I know I'm saying the eastern U.S., but there actually is a chance for the northern mid-Atlantic and the Northeast to be warmer than average. And I really think this is due to a big-time wet pattern down here. But you go a little further in the future, 8 to 14 days, this carries us from the June 30th to the July 6th range, so through the 4th of July. Looks to stay more of a wet pattern and below average temperatures for the whole South. So we'll watch this. I know there ain't a lot of people who are big fans of scorching hot heat, but I know there's a lot of people who love summer. This really looks like a pattern for the Gulf states, for the South Central U.S. and the Southeast and parts of the Mid-Atlantic. It looks like it's going to be your average highs in the low to upper 80s and a chance of rain every day, probably for the next, 2 weeks. Not a high chance. Some days will be higher than others, but I really don't see a lot of heat in the near future. So almost to July, guys. So the days are getting shorter very, very slowly. Actually, it still gets dark at the same time, I believe, for the next week or two. And the only thing that happens is actually the sun rises start happening a little bit later. So you start to lose a minute every other day here for the next couple weeks. So that's all I got, guys. Nothing crazy to really talk about. We'll continue to check out the tropics and keep you all aware with that. Thank you all, and y'all have a blessed night.